What's going on, everyone? Happy Friday. Welcome to another Finance Friday call. And tonight we have a very, very special guest with us tonight. For those of you that are watching us, watching the recording, we are the Wave Makers. We're a community of people committed to creating positive waves of change for ourselves, our community, and the world. And we are every single week bringing someone that has tremendous value to bring to the world. And tonight we have the pleasure of having our brother, Laz Cor, okay? Laz is living in South Florida right now, and I had the pleasure of meeting him with our other brother, Eric Brown. He put us through a two-day boot camp style training from his ex-Navy SEAL background, and man, that was a challenge. And we'll dive into that here in a little bit, but I'm super excited to dive in with you, Laz, myself and Mike, and we're gonna, before we even ask you a couple of questions, Laz, why don't you come on just for a couple of minutes, and from your perspective, man, I mean, we know that you're working with a lot of high-end clients, and you have an amazing company that I got to experience part of that experience called the Morph, right? The Morph Experience. And Laz, do you mind grabbing a mic and just for a couple of minutes telling everyone that's here with us tonight, what is that? What is the Morph Experience that you've created and that you're working with so many amazing people? And then we're going to dive into some more questions. Thank you for joining us, brother.
Awesome. It's kind of an interesting introduction. So let's see. I mean, where do we start? My name's Laz, and we've had Nick and Eric Brown come down here to South Florida and experience some of our Morph Experience training. So basically, I work with a team of personal development experts, and we're a bunch of nerds that just spend all of our time learning the world's best personal development content. We study the who's out there, what companies are using what technologies to make their people perform better, what organization, what types of trainings are they doing. So we spend all of our time learning all these different things and researching the commonalities. And then we have our own systems in which we give that content to people. For example, one of the things that we've noticed is that whether we're working with professional athletes or businessmen or dancers or musicians, the one thing they all have in common is that they need to master their breathing, and that breathing itself helps you, I would say, manage your mindset, not control it, but manage your mindset. And so that's what we do. We have technology and programs, whether it's live events or online programs, where people can come and learn our techniques on how to do things, what we call finding your morph code, which is the practices, the personal development habits that you incorporate, that you do on a day-to-day basis to help you perform at your best, because we all want to perform at our best because that's what gives us the best life available. And so that's what we do.
That's amazing, brother. And I just want to ask, you, how did you get into this world, right? I know that we're all committed to growing and we're seeking to improve ourselves. And that's every single one in this call, that we're in that category, right? So how did you personally, Laz, get into this space, and what was the driving force that led you to wanting to create an actual program in order to help people in this area?
It's a good question. I think, I would like to say that it was some kind of like long-term desire maybe, but it was more like unintended consequences. In the Bible, it says, seek and you shall find. And, for a long time, what I made my priority was seeking that, which was a closer relationship to my creator and a closer relationship to who I am versus who I'm supposed to be, based on, my upbringing, whether it's my family culture or the culture in our society as a whole. And sometime in my service, I realized that although I really believed in supporting the men that were doing the mission, I still think that there was more that we can do to provide peace at a larger scale other than providing those tools of war. So I saw that I could be someone who offers those different kinds of tools. And when I got out of the service, I just, I kind of jumped from career path to career path based on what I'm supposed to be doing. For example, once I got out of the service, I was like, as you know, Nick, I have a mixed martial arts background. I'm probably a little bit better than the average person, but not no UFC fighter. Those guys would wipe the floor with me. But during that time in my early 20s, I was actually very, very, very talented. And so I said, okay, well, maybe I'll try that. So I went like one of those routes where you leave the service, you go, you join an awesome fire academy, get in shape and get good at mixed martial arts. And so an unintended consequence happened in life where it derailed me. And then I went to do the next thing. And then I got derailed again. So, like, oh, maybe I'll go to law school, derail. Maybe I'll go to med school, derail. Maybe I'll go study filmmaking, derail. And what I learned in that process over like 15 years of pretty much making mistakes is really what it is. And I noticed that no matter what thing I was studying, there was like a life cycle to it in learning that material. And when you start learning that you can do that in every type of thing that you learn, you start to see the commonalities of learning new things. So that kind of piqued my attention. I'm like, wow, I like learning new things. And, as a kid, I remember when I was first doing martial arts, we studied a very specific form of karate at that time. You're a little kid, you're learning karate, but by the time you're like 14, you're like, wait a second, I don't want to do this karate stuff anymore. I want to do MMA. I like kickboxing. I like boxing. I like judo. So you start to learn different things. And as we get older, we kind of get told you have to pick one thing, right? But I was always very curious about learning different things. So as I'm, failing or succeeding in all these different types of career paths, what I noticed was that each career path or each pathway has things to learn, and you can learn those things faster by applying these techniques. So we said, okay, well, why don't I apply these techniques and learn all these things quickly? And so that's what I started doing. I just learned things quickly. And, one of the things that we started noticing is that when it all comes down to it, as human beings, we're nothing more than a combination of the chain of reactions that we are. So as we go out through the day in our lives, and the input we receive, whether it be through Facebook, the media, what you listen to, what you read, your friends, your environment, you have all this stimulus coming in, and you're responding to that stimulus automatically. And so every stimulus has an automatic response. For example, there's a mechanism in your eye that has you blink automatically. If I shine a light in your eye, you'll blink automatically, right? It happens. But your body's made up of all these different types of, we call them automatic response mechanisms, right? If you see a rabbit pass by, your eye naturally goes to respond to it. And so we dive into all these different places, and we're like, okay, well, no matter what you're doing, you're automatically responding based on who you are, what you've learned. What if we can take technology that we can modify who you are and what you've learned, and now you can do that thing better? And then you're this kind of organism that responds to things automatically, and they build you, right? What's a good example? In your arms, you have these automatic response mechanisms that build your biceps. So we figured out that if you go to the gym and you do these certain exercises, the natural effect is that your automatic response mechanisms from your arms start to now build these bigger, more defined biceps. So in our ingenious self, we're like, okay, I want nice arms, go do biceps. So we're hacking that automatic response mechanism. And what we aim to do is give people tools so that they can build their habits where they're hacking these automatic response mechanisms. For example, we know that if you take the time to do breath work, what it does for your hormones and for the health of your body and for your mental clarity is scientifically proven to be beneficial. So it doesn't matter if you're an actor trying to act or an NFL player trying to play football, your ability to master your breathing is critical to how well you perform. So I know that was a lot, but basically, yeah, in that journey of not knowing what I wanted to do, I studied all these different things. And then I noticed that how you approach all these things is really the same. And it's composed of the day-to-day activities, habits, the things that you do. And how you can get the best result in impacting that is working on your mind, body awareness and the habits that you do, so that when you go into the day, you're consistently be more effective. If you pay attention to you just go on Facebook or Yahoo or whatever, and there's this saying that says, win the morning, win the day, right? It's no secret. a lot of the top guys would say, win the morning, win the day. And if you look, Nick, I'm pretty sure you do that, correct? And I know Eric does that as well. And I know that some of the leaders that you guys have worked with do that as well. So what's the one thing that we can deduce from there is like, no matter who you are, how you wake up matters. So what is your combination? For some people, it's wake up. You know, I have a friend of mine that teaches fasting. And the first thing he does is he wakes up, he waits an hour before he has his coffee. I wake up and I don't have coffee probably for like 2 or 3 hours. The first thing I have to do is drink water with apple cider vinegar. And then after, I have coffee later on in the afternoon. That's what works for me. So for everyone, it's different. Everyone has a different combination, what we call your morph code. And as you go through life as a person, there's the morph code that goes along with you living your best life, so to speak. And then anything else that you approach as part of your life, how you approach it, there's a way that you do it, a method, so to speak. And then you could refine and adjust how you go about that method. And it's the same techniques for everything.
I love that. I love that. Laz, this is Mike coming into you. I'm super excited to dive into these questions because I know that a lot of people on this call can resonate with the type of work that you on a couple things. From your recollection, you know, I know I've heard that you work with a lot of high level people. You're working with a variety of different people. Is there a common mental block that you see in these individuals before they start morphing, before they start making their big transitions and their shifts in the right direction? Is there a common mental dam that you see that's consistent in a lot of the people who are looking to improve their lives? And if so, what is that?
Okay, that's a great question. I think what's true for all of us is that no matter who we are and what we're doing, there's always a level of someone we want to be and something we want to accomplish. And there's a gap between that which you want to fulfill and where you are or you see yourself. And it doesn't matter who you are. I guarantee you the most successful people in the world, if they're not lying, they would tell you that there's a gap for them as well. And so everyone has a gap. Like I said, it doesn't matter who you are. I would stand in front of anyone and make sure that if you made sure to ask that question to actually get to the bottom of it, I think everyone, if they're being truthful, would give up that at some point. I mean, I know I can speak for myself, that the person who I want to be and the person that I am, there's a gap. And I think that's true for all people. So what's congruent with everyone is the belief in yourself. And everyone has a limitation to their belief. No matter what you're doing, how big it is in comparison to other human beings, you may be the perceived most successful person in your arena or in the world, really, but who you are for yourself, what you want to accomplish, you know that there's a gap between that person and you. And I think that the difference between achieving those things and the speed in which you achieve those things is the dedication that you take to have that transformed or mitigated, so to speak. So it doesn't matter who you are. There's some of the best basketball players in the world that are known as like the best 3-point shooters ever. They have a 3-point, coach that you've never even heard of that is nowhere near as good as them at doing 3-pointers, but they can stand there and be like, hey, you dropped your elbow, bring your elbow up. Hey, you dropped your elbow, bring your elbow up. And that's now reprogramming that person to be even better. So I think no matter who you are, whether you think very highly of yourself or very lowly of yourself, the ability to stay humble and know that there's a gap and then seek to find those people that are going to help you close in that gap is something that is congruent, common for all of us, and something that we could all do. It's something we could all do about it, and we have each other for it. I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize. I bet I can point to you and your team where one person covers one gap, and you can see other people's gaps, and you could. Everyone has something valuable to say or not. It means that when you seek out to cover those gaps that you see in who you are and what you want to accomplish, that's where the work gets done to level you up to the next level.
I love that answer, Laz. And, one of the takeaways that I wrote down here is finding the best and learning from them, right? Being humble to know that there is a gap. And I think that realizing that everyone has a gap is something that allows us, that from our perspective, we may see ourselves and think, wow, we're so behind in comparison to other people. And you know, in a sense, undervaluing our own power and over emphasizing on the power of others, right? Which naturally diminishes our own sense of identity and belief in ourselves. And that happens psychologically. I know that I go through that, and I'm catching myself, and I'm aware of that now, but I didn't used to be. So I love that answer. That's great. A question that I have is, with the clients that you've worked with the people that maybe that you learn from as well, right? The top achievers, the high performers that you know or that you've seen perform in whatever field or industry, what are some of the habits that they have in place in common? Not just necessarily, I know you already mentioned the morning routine, right? And having that morning routine solid in place so that they win the day, they win the morning so they can win the day. But what are some of the other habits or mindsets that you see common in every single one of those players in life?
Let's see, I'm going to freestyle here a little bit. I want to answer that question differently for you guys than I normally would answer that. I think if I think back to the best people that I've interacted with, and by best people, I don't mean higher value than any other person as far as, you know, we're all people and we're all equals. What I mean is in their industry, what they represent in their industry relative to everyone else. One of the people that I can think of that always comes to the top of mind is one of the guys that I served with, that if you meet this guy and you get to know him, how he goes about his business is very distinct to how other people go about their business. And I think that the best people that I've met that, you know, run finance companies or lead people into combat or, you know, good fathers and good mothers, it doesn't matter. When they're at the top of their game, they're very clear on how they are going to go about their business. I'll give you an example. There's a lot of leaders out there, and you could say whatever you want to say about them. You could judge them, but for them, who they are and how they visualize is how they go about their business. An example of that would be like, think about an old Wild West sheriff. Like an old Wild West sheriff, that's a big deal. Maybe like, you know, people have different opinions about police officers these days or whatnot, but if you think back to like the Wild West, it's literally a town in the middle of nowhere. People come in here through horses and they could do whatever they want to you. And there's a guy who says, hey, no mas, right? Like that's it. This is going to go in this direction because I say so, and I'm the sheriff. And I'm the sheriff, and to me, honor is important, or integrity is important, or respecting your elders is important, or not putting your feet when you're in the salon is important. Whatever it is, it's whatever they comprise as their own. This is how I'm going to conduct business, and then you hold yourself to that standard. And if you notice someone who we could see that in is Kobe Bryant, right? Kobe Bryant that just passed. How he goes about his business is very distinct. He's very clear on how the attention to detail that he puts in, the work ethic that he puts in. If you look at the best people that are the highest accomplishers in whatever area that they're in, and it could be a big scale, small scale, at the level of individual or at the level of group, what is so for everyone is that the best performers and the highest achievers are very clear on how they're going to go about their business. Like they define parameters for themselves, and they're uncompromising to those parameters. Just one last piece on that. I have a friend of mine, someone that we actually know together, you, me, and Eric, and he's a finance business guy, and he's a very good example of just an average person. You would think he's average, but he's not. You know, he's an exceptional father, exceptional husband, exceptional family member, exceptional friend, exceptional business partner. For him, being kind is always a thing for him. So no matter what business negotiation is in, no matter whether it's kids or a stranger, for him, being kind is important. And now that is representative and everywhere that he does, everything that he touches. And I think for all of us, part of finding how we do things and our special flavor and our rules on how we're going to play the game is very important, because it allows you to keep yourself true, in the sense where, suppose I'm doing a business deal and I'm noticing that the thing that I'm chasing is money. I'm chasing, like, I can hear in my conversations, it's the money conversation, or we're planning out how we're going to make more money. And for me, that's not the primary reason why I do business. The primary I do business, well, obviously I need to survive. But the most important thing to me is making sure that the message is as from there, whatever monetary value we make from there, that's the art form, right? Trying to find that magic number. But what's leading in the front is our desire to do a good job, to provide a good product. And you could ask yourself, and no matter what it is that you're doing, is how do I want to go about this? Do I want to be known as a person that do I want to be the person that was known as, during the coronavirus, I did not help my family or friends, or I had more money in my bank account, but I decided not to help people out. And deciding who you are and the terms that you're going to play with is very instrumental to what it is that you do, because you can start seeing, like, all right, am I getting closer to being more kind and more generous, or am I being more of an asshole, excuse my French, and being more selfish? And now you can start to really modify your journey, and that's where the most magic comes from.
Wow. Super powerful. And, a lot of the mentors I've come across, it makes you more of what you already are. And I love that you're having that conversation of, where do you fall on the moral spectrum? One thing that I wrote down for me, Michael, how do you go about your business? And I think that not a lot of attention gets put at that. I know how I do things, but that phrasing, how do you go about your business? And that your business takes me into, how do I go about my family life, my relationships, my friendships, my business partnerships, my business, my workout habits, my daily routine, making my bed, everything, right? It's all my business. And, which takes us into a common theme in the Wave Makers. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So I love that you took it there, man. There's so much value. If you're getting value, drop some 2s, drop some 3s for our boy here. We got 18 heads on the line. We're super excited and grateful for what you're bringing to the table. My next question, as decently successful, naturally you got this level that you're trying to get to, where you are now, which most people would look at and say, he's successful, right? He's getting stuff done. He's got his own brand. He's got his own business. What is one skill that you would go back and refine way earlier?
Oh man.
In order to, see that next level of yourself? What's that one thing that you look back at, knowing what you know now and the things that are occurring right now in your business, where you're like, yeah, I should have paid way more attention to that way earlier?
Well, I want to answer that 2 ways. Number 1 is spending more time finding what works for me. I have a saying that says, until you find what works for you, your job is to. And you could just apply that everywhere, right? If one of the common challenges that I see is that people think that, oh, my friend does, CrossFit 4 times a week, so I need to do it 4 times a week. No, maybe not. Maybe CrossFit for you once a week or twice a week is more than enough. And you can spend 2 of those workout occasions doing more swimming, which will be even more beneficial for your particular needs, right? We're always trying to do what everyone else is doing rather than do what works for me. And I think everything's perfect post when it happens, right? So I can't say that I wish that it would have not been that way, because it got me to where I am. But I do feel that the time spent on knowing what I wanted to do saves a lot of pain in doing the wrong thing. An example of that is, I have people that complain to me and they're like, oh, I want a relationship, but they're doing single people kind of thing. You can't have both. You got to choose your path. And what happens is people have confusion on choosing the path. Is it this path? Is it that path? For me, I felt like I was always following the wrong thing. Maybe it was money, maybe it was fame. And luckily for me, I have a very close relationship with, my creator, in the sense that I spend a lot of time praying and asking and, missing the mark tremendously. I I don't want to get too specifics about it, but let's just say that I've had my share of huge mistakes. And when I can see the detours, it's all in moments where I was following something else rather than my true self, or seeking to, what do I want to create? What do I like to do? It's rather than having it show up like how someone else says it should look like. For example, there's a lot of influencers that spend money on, or I would say use their money, however you want to define it. They use their money to purchase, expensive vehicles, right? And for a long time, that was a thing for me. This is a true story. I once had a very expensive car, and I got rid of it because I had like a coming to Jesus moment. I was like, oh, get rid of everything and follow me. I'm like, okay, no materialism, fine. And then, so I bought like the cheapest car that I could buy that, not going to give me any issues. And I had that car, and it was like a very economic car. And I parked that car next to a girl that I was interested in, and she had a better car than I did. And I was like, no way, I'm buying a different car. Because in my mind, it was a thing. Whereas now I'm like, my car is like the last thing on my mind. I have like whatever I created that's the most efficient and purposeful for what I do. And it's okay if you like that stuff. But for a long time, because other people said that was important, that's where I was spending my time and energy. Whereas now, in a sustainable farm in an acre, that's a challenge. That's a big challenge. And that's the challenge that works for me. For to each his own. I'm not criticizing anyone, but following other people's thing and not being connected to what mattered to me and what works for me, that's definitely the number one thing. The number two thing is communication. Everything we do is based on communication. And it wasn't until probably like my late 20s, early 30s, where I started studying deep education on communication. And the first thing I noticed is that I found out that I was a jerk, and I thought I was like the nicest guy, because if you know me, you'll know that I'll give you the shirt off my back. I'll let you sleep on the floor, at my place. I'll, buy things for you. I try to help people out the best I can. Not like I'm some Mother Teresa, because I'm not, but just like a sensible average person that would, kind of be generous or kind. And that's what I thought about myself, but everyone else thought that I was a jerk. And I remember going out with my cousin one night, and my cousin's very pretty, and we were out clubbing, and so usually, typically when I go out with her, she brings all her friends that are also very pretty, and I was like, this was it, right? And so then everyone's like, oh, we got to go home. I'm like, go home? What do you mean go home? It's like early. I'm just getting started. And they're like, no, Laz, let's go home. And now I'm like, no, what are you talking about? I'll run home. It's no big deal. And I'm getting like passionate about it, right? Like, I'm like, no, it's no big deal, man. Do you know who I am? I can run there with no shoes on. Are you kidding me? I want to party. And my cousin looked at me and she's like, dude, you're being a jerk. And I'm like, I'm not a jerk. How are you going to call me a jerk? I brought you here. I'll do this. I'll do that. Right? Like all the reasons why I'm not a jerk. And it wasn't until I started doing my communications training that I realized that just because you see yourself a certain way doesn't mean that other people see you that way. And so how I, in the past would typically go about business is that, I have one of those gifts where I can look at a problem and I can find the solution, typically, not always, but either quicker than most people or like amongst the people that are the fastest problem solvers, right? Not all the time. There's people that, are smarter in all different types of areas and all different types of scenarios compared to me. However, if you get a group of 100 of us and we're trying to solve a problem, I may be one of the people who gets it first. And that is very frustrating because now I have to sit here and explain to these people for an hour what I knew an hour ago. And it's not that complicated. So, Nick asked me earlier, I had one of my clients that runs a finance company, and he asked me to work with his team. How else can I explain it? It's this simple. And then I catch myself like, oh, wait a second. I'm just being passionate. and I'm being a jerk. And that self-awareness, now I can change my tone, I can change my tempo, I can, remind myself that, I'm no better than anyone else and no one is better than me. And now let's take it back and do it step by step and figure out where the problem is, rather than the frustration on why people don't get it. It's just like, you can see that now, where some people think that they're smart and they're like, oh, you shouldn't wear masks. And they'll give you the lists of all the reasons why you shouldn't wear masks. And then the other people's like, oh, we're smart. Here's the list of all the reasons why you should, right? In either direction, you may have whatever opinion you have. However, the bottom line is, we find ourselves, whether it's at the grocery store or wherever we're going, that there is someone who has a mask or someone that doesn't have a mask. So you're going to fall at one end of the spectrum, whether you like it or not. However, how do you react to that? And most people, they think that they're right, and their reaction now becomes the thing. Like, they react in a way that's explosive, so they got emotionally hijacked, so to speak, in that moment. And I think when it comes to communication, when you can understand how human communication works, the words that are coming out of your mouth, the words that are coming out of someone else's mouth, how to listen to people, how to be heard, is a skill set that the earlier on that we practice that skill set, it allows us to build a life that works. People don't learn that until maybe their 30s, if they're lucky, if they spend a lifetime doing personal development. They don't teach us how to speak to each other and then how to behave accordingly. So what you have here is just a bunch of people that are reacting to other people's communications in a unprofound way, to say.
Wow, Laz. That's amazing, man. I have so many more questions. I just want to keep diving much deeper. And
Thanks,
for the time's sake, unfortunately, for the people that are watching the recording, we're ending the recording right now. But for the ones that are here still on the call live, we're going to dive a little bit deeper. So guys, thanks so much for joining us. Hope that you took a lot of value like we did. In the description of this video, we're going to be dropping all the information from Laz, so you can get connected with them in social media and learn more about the Morph Experience as well. Thank you guys so much. God bless.
Well, let me just say, Nick,
Yes,
on that note, if for you guys, just based on the relationship I have with your team, they can email me personally at info@morphexperience.com, and we'll answer any of the questions for your team specifically.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much, Laz. Thank you guys for joining us.